Welcome to Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth, where we dive into all subjects that will help you become healthier and happier. As a dentist, I believe dentistry is more than just teeth, so I created this show to focus on overall health. We will hear from leading experts about eating better, exercising better, breathing better, and sleeping better. We want to help you create harmony in your life so you can live your life to the fullest. We want you to thrive. Hello and welcome to Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth. I'm Dr. Hal Stewart. We have a very special guest today, something that's very close to my heart regarding breath work. I'll give you a bit of a history uh, on my end after I introduce our guest. Our guest is Elsa Unenge, and she's Swedish. She lives in California. And good morning, Elsa. How you doing?
Good morning, Hal. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
I'm
Um,
so happy to
I'm
be here with you, chatting.
well. I'm very happy that you're here too because this is breath work is very special to me personally. I had mentioned something about my personal story. I was diagnosed with hypertension about 6 or 8 years ago, and it was like my physician, who I love. He's a typical Western medicine doctor. Though, just his answer to me was, "Yeah, you're fit. You exercise. Some people just have high blood pressure, and you just have to deal with that with medicines." And so I took medications, and I just kept thinking something's not right. Why would there's a reason that I have high blood pressure, and it wasn't horribly high, but it was enough to cause concern for him. So I took blood pressure medication for a couple of years, and then decided, hey, I'm going to do something about this. And then I read James Nestor's book, which we can talk about later because I know that that was a big influence on you as well. Um, and I started doing functional breathing, which is what you basically teach, and was able to, after going to a retreat with James Nestor and about 80 other pulmonauts, we call ourselves, was able to control my blood pressure through breathing, and not just blood pressure, but it's just improved my health overall. So I'm a big believer in what you do, and I'm really excited. I really am that we have connected with you because this is something that you can teach all over the world in your home there, out there in California. So tell me a little bit else about your background and your business. How did you get started in this?
Yeah. So I'm from Sweden. Now I live in LA and I've lived here for about 6.5 years. And my background, well, I have a bachelor in behavioral science. So I'm very interested in how people work and why we work the way we work. And then I moved here about 6 years ago because my husband got a job. Before this, we both lived in London for 6 years. And then I wanted to move to the US. I was like, I'm ready. I'm done with London. Let's try to move to the US. And he got a job and he was like, I got a job offer in LA. Do you want to move to LA? And I was like, yes, perfect. Never been, but I trust my sister who had been, and she said I would love it. So we moved here. And in the beginning, due to visa situations, I couldn't work. So I was like, oh, I could learn more about yoga because I like to do yoga. I'm not going to become a yoga teacher. I'm just going to do the yoga teacher certification to learn more. So I did that. And then I actually started teaching. So I started teaching yoga for a year. And then after that, I also stumbled upon James Nestor, and everything he said, I was like, how, I didn't know anything he said before I listened to him. So I was like, how can we not learn this in school? This is such basic knowledge about the most important thing we do every day, which is breathing. And how can we not learn this, yeah, in school, for example? So then I went down that route and I was like, oh, I want to learn more. I jumped on a breathing certificate course, and I was also thinking, I'm not going to become a breathwork coach. I just want to learn more for me. And then at the same time as I finished the breath certification, I also got my work permit, and someone overheard when I told someone else that I just finished a breathwork course. And this other person, they were like, oh, did you say you were a breathwork coach? I just read the book by James Nestor and I realized that I'm not breathing right and I'm looking for a breathwork coach. Are you taking clients? And in my head, I was like, not at all. I'm not a breathwork coach. And then I was just like, nodding. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So, anyways, so I took on her as my first client, and then she was just happy with everything she learned. So she told all her friends, and then all of a sudden, I was in business and I had clients. So my husband said, why not try it? You're in LA, you can do anything here. So
Yeah.
that's how I just like stumbled into becoming a breathwork coach. And I realized I had found what I was meant to do because it's just something I'm so passionate about and something I'm so interested in. And it's relevant for everyone. So, everyone I speak to and everyone who comes to my workshops, no matter if they are like, they might think yoga is a little woo woo and breathwork is even more woo woo, but then they realize, oh, it's just the basic science about breathing, like the whatever's in our medical textbooks. It's not something about spiritual. I'm into that too, but some people are not. So it's always nice to hear people being surprised and like, oh, I didn't realize this was so simple and how can I not know this? And yeah, so it's very fulfilling to talk about breathing with people who've never really thought about their breath before. So
Well,
yeah,
and it's life changing. I mean, it's something that we do every single day. If we do it correctly, it makes a big difference than if we don't do it correctly. So I tell my patients, I said, you can live your life eating at, McDonald's or Burger King every day, and you'll live, and Western medicine can help you get along, and you can live a full life doing that. Um, that's would be the equivalent of breathing through your mouth all the time. You can
exactly.
survive doing that, but to really thrive, you need to nasal breathe, and there's a lot of good reasons for that, which I'm sure that we'll get into today. I know that the book Breath by James Nestor is from talking to Dr. Corridor. You had told her that's your Bible. I we went to that resort with him, and it just there's a lot of good information there. He spoke about 2 hours per day, but he was involved with all of the breath work that we are doing, and he had these breath coaches that you might know some of them. I don't know, but um, during that week, things happened to me that I have never experienced before from a health standpoint, from an emotional standpoint. It was amazing. It's hard to describe unless you start doing it. And so for our listeners, it's not something that you have to get into. It's not a cult. It's medical science that shows. I mean, you look at movies you've watched throughout the years. If someone gets really flustered, the people around them, what do they say? Just stop and take a few deep breaths. I mean, there's a reason for that. There's a reason that we do. There's a physiological reason for breathing correctly and breathing deeply and breathing through through your nose. There's a place for mouth breathing, obviously, but I think I'd like to get in a little bit about carbon dioxide, because people think breathing is all about oxygen, but the carbon dioxide plays a big role as well. I know that you also are big on the book "Shut Your Mouth," right, with George Catlin, that was written back in the 1870s. Uh,
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I want to. But I thought it was too old. I didn't even know you could read it. But I've like scanned through some images of it online, and I've
yeah,
heard so many people talking about it. So I'm super fascinated about George Caitlin too. Yeah.
Yeah, he studied, for those that don't know, he studied Native American tribes, and he saw that they had a really good understanding about nasal breathing. And he one of the quotes in his book, he has a indigenous mother with a child, and the infant's lips come apart, and the mother slowly pinches them back together to make the child breathe through their nose, and it just they they ingrain that in from an early age for their children to breathe through their nose, and the Native Americans never breathe through their mouth. They only breathe through their mouth if they were eating, and that's really the only time they hadn't their mouth open, if they were eating or talking. And they didn't have the facial deformities that white men that had come over from Europe. So it affects every aspect of your life. Tell me what exactly, so people go, okay, she's a breath coach. What does that mean? You teach the fundamentals of breathing. And how is that important in being a breath coach? How do you work with your clients?
Yeah, so I work with people one on one. So one on one coaching, usually online because people are all over the world. If they're here in LA, I sometimes come to their house or they come to mine, and we set up a program. We either meet 4 times or 8 times, and then we meet every week or every other week, depending on how people's schedule look like. So some people want to meet once a month, and then that works perfectly too. Some people want to meet every day even. And then I also work with people through my online courses. So I have a few online courses that are almost 100% on demand, so they can do it whenever they want to, and they find their own time. There's no rush to complete them or anything, and then they always get a one-on-one coaching session included too, so they can ask all their questions that they really didn't fully understand, or something specific to their situation. And then I also do company sessions or group sessions. So I teach sometimes in person group settings, or I teach companies online. So this week I've actually had 4 company sessions, and it was 1,490 people attending.
Wow.
That was
That's
great.
amazing. Were you a little nervous?
I was nervous when I saw before the first session that actually 1,000 people have signed up, and I was like, 1,000 people. But then when I came on board, I couldn't see anyone. I could just see a chat, and it was just like
Okay.
me and my face. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, this feels okay. So I thought I was going to be more nervous than I actually was. So that was very relieving to me.
I
Yeah,
did this. I had a They had a world breath conference. I forget what it was called back in COVID.
yeah.
And they had a lot of celebrities that would come on and talk about breathing and everything. And I was asked to give my story. And also, I'm a musician, so I sang a couple of songs. And it was the same thing. I was in my living room in front of a camera, but there were several million people across the world watching this thing. But you don't get nervous when it's hey, I'm just here in my living room enjoying myself. Um, Tell us. I would like for First of all, I want our audience to know this is not breathing breathwork is not for athletes. It's not for it's not for sick people. It's not for healthy. It's for everyone. Um, Pregnant women, oh my gosh, they can benefit so well from breath work during their pregnancy. Um, Tell us a little bit about CO2 tolerance in optimizing health, and how the carbon dioxide is important, just as important as oxygen.
Yeah, so a lot of us, including me, before I got into this whole topic of becoming a breathwork coach, think that oxygen is good and carbon dioxide is bad. And we breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. That's roughly as much as people know about it. But what most people don't know, or when they get surprised, is when I tell them the more you breathe, the less oxygen you get. And the less you breathe, the more oxygen you get. So that's because you need carbon dioxide to be present for oxygen to be released into your brain, or be released into your body, or wherever you need that oxygen molecule. So it's not just as simple as breathing in and then oxygen diffuses straight into where you need it. You breathe it in. Let's pretend this is an oxygen molecule. You breathe it in, preferably through the nose. It goes down into your lungs, and then it diffuses into your blood, and in your blood, oxygen gets captured by hemoglobin. And hemoglobin is working like a little cage, you can think of, just to make it easy. So now oxygen is locked into a cage, and it starts its journey in the blood vessels. And maybe this oxygen molecule is going to your brain, so you can understand what we are talking about, maybe remember something, and maybe focus on what we're saying. So it starts its journey, and then when it gets to the brain, it needs to first be released from the cage to be able to be utilized by your brain. And to be released from the cage, you need a key. And this key is carbon dioxide. So you need carbon dioxide to be present for oxygen to be released from hemoglobin and to be able to be utilized by your body. So what happens then when we breathe a lot, and maybe even through the mouth? Again, we breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. So what do we breathe out? We breathe out all these keys. So the more you breathe, the more keys you breathe out, and less keys are available to release oxygen from hemoglobin to be able to utilize it. And if you breathe less, because you're always producing carbon dioxide in your body, your muscles, when they are warm, you produce carbon dioxide. So if you breathe slowly, for example, or if you even hold your breath, you're still producing carbon dioxide, but you're not letting it out as fast or not at all if you're holding your breath. So you're increasing your levels of CO2, which means you're also increasing the amount of keys in your body. So you have more keys to release more oxygen. So that's how breathing less or not breathing at all or breathing slowly increases the number of keys and therefore are being able to release more oxygen. And if you're breathing more, you're breathing out the keys and oxygen is just stuck here in this cage and we can't utilize it. It's just bond to hemoglobin. So that's usually how I explain, because it's hard for people to understand, like, wait, the more we breathe, the more oxygen we should be able to utilize. But that's not how it works inside our body. Carbon dioxide needs to be present for oxygen to be released. So we don't want to breathe it out as soon as we can. And it's not just a waste gas. Both are equally important, I would say. And another thing that I was going to add to this, I can't remember now, but
Well,
that's
if
sort of it.
think about it, but if you remember, officer, just bring it up. That's the box breathing. That's basically that for those that don't know, box breathing is when you breathe in for 4 seconds, 8 seconds, whatever you can do it at different times. You hold the breath and you breathe out for the same. So you breathe in for 5 seconds, hold it for five, breathe out for five, hold that for five. And you just like a box, you just keep going. That's what you're doing there. You're allowing the proper amounts of carbon dioxide to build up so you get better oxygen saturation.
Mm.
Most what we find is most people, and I'm sure you see this too. Most people live their lives breathing too shallow. They don't breathe deep enough. And so, what happens when you breathe too shallow? You can get by all day doing that, but it's not healthy. What's happening when you're just going about your daily activities and you're breathing very shallow and you never take the time to, sit back and breathe deeply?
Yeah, so it's the same with your McDonald or the burger example. Like, yes, you can breathe shallowly and you will survive, but you won't have the best possible life. Like, you don't maximize your potential. So
Mhm.
when we breathe shallow, what we often mean is that we breathe up into our chest. We even like rise our shoulders when we breathe in. So for example, if I breathe in now, you will see that everything lifts up, and then when I breathe out, it falls down. And also, when I talk about the word deep, deep breathing, if I ask someone actually to take a deep breath, most people do. They breathe up far or like close to the surface. They breathe to the surface instead of deep to the bottom of their lungs. So that's why I sometimes say deep, but I try to avoid it because it's misinterpreted as breathing big. Deep breath, maybe if you don't even think about it, you do a big breath, and we don't necessarily want to breathe big because that's when we breathe up into our chest straight away and our shoulders. So what I want is for people to actually breathe deep down to the bottom, far away from the top, not shallow, not up. So I usually say low, breathing low. And when we breathe low, that's when we use our diaphragm. And most people have heard about the diaphragm, but same as me, I didn't really know what it was for. I didn't really know how it looked like, or I didn't really know how it worked. But your diaphragm is your main breathing muscle, and it sits just under your lungs, just under your ribs, and it moves down when you inhale, pulling the air in and giving more space for your lungs to expand. And then when you breathe out, it moves back up to its resting position and it's pushing the air out. So the lungs get smaller. And when you breathe low, you're using your diaphragm properly. And if you don't breathe low, if you breathe shallow or up into your chest, you're overusing the secondary breathing muscles, for example, your chest muscles. So we breathe around 25,000 breaths per day, different from from person to person. But imagine doing this 25,000 times a day when you're not supposed to be overusing these muscles. No wonder you have stiff neck, sore chest, sore shoulders. So that's what can happen if you breathe shallowly every day. And if you don't use your diaphragm properly, it's pretty important to do it because it's part of your spinal stability, it's part of your posture, and if you don't, it's part of your core muscles, and if you don't use it properly, it gets weak, and you can have different, like, you want to have a stable spine because otherwise you're prone to injury and pain. And if you had pain in your life or injury, you know how much that can affect your body. And they also saw when they tested those who were properly diaphragmatic breathing, they scored higher on a functional movement test. So functional movement is just like what we do every day. It can be twisting, it can be bending, it can be bending your knees, etc. So they scored higher on this functional movement test, and those who had poor diaphragmatic breathing, they scored lower on the test. And those who scored lower, they were also more prone to injury and pain. So that's like how important it is. It can affect your whole life.
Yeah. It was interesting when you were talking about your spinal cord. When we went to James Nestor's breath retreat in Costa Rica, he actually showed a video filmed back in the early 1900s, and I can't remember the lady's name. It was a lady, I believe her first name was Mary, but she took women with oh gosh, I've lost
Scoliosis.
scoliosis, and with breath work was able to straighten their spines out. It was absolutely amazing, and there was actually video, black and white video of these women and showing before and after. It was incredible. We take it for granted how important this is and what it can do. What are some like for people that this is completely new to them? They're going, "What breathing? What are some uh, health changes you see in your clients when they start doing this breath work?"
Yeah, so people come to me because they maybe have heard or read the book and they're like, "Oh, I haven't thought about my breath, but now I have thought about it. And now I realize I'm breathing wrong." Or they just know that I've heard breath work could help for sleep or headaches or sports performance or executives who wants to take better decisions and focus, or just someone who is stressed and anxious or have a dysfunctional like dysregulated nervous system. So they come to me for those reasons, and then they see improvements in all of those, but they also see an unexpected thing that they didn't think, which is they are getting such a more deeper connection to themselves, to their body, because they have just been living in their head and just with the surroundings. And now they maybe for the first time went inwards to check in how what's happening inside me, how do I really feel. And they start to get better at noticing interoception. They're strengthening their interoception, which is that you can pick up on signals that are coming from inside. For example, you can feel your heartbeat beating fast or slow. And when they pick up on these, and they can also like, oh, they notice how they're breathing on a day-to-day basis. And when they can pick up on these signals, when they become more aware of these, they can then change them straight away instead of having them take over and getting you more stressed. And just, maybe they hit a wall and they have to take a break from work or something. So instead of waiting till we hit the wall, they can change it before we get there. And even with anxiety, panic attacks, for example, they learn the cues that might be even happening an hour before the panic attack starts. They learn those cues, and because they have become more aware of their breath and those cues, they can then change their breathing first of all. They can change their breathing to stop this negative loop, which can be life changing.
Yeah. Well, I have a 20-minute breathing exercise that I do. Adrian and I do it together, and I do it. Once you learn it, you can just do it on your own anytime you want. And I like the 20 minutes because that's a time frame that I can squeeze into my schedule. But if I do it breathing through my nose, I get complete relaxation. I can do the same breathing exercise through my mouth for energy. So, obligate mouth breathing. I mean, purposeful mouth breathing is there's nothing wrong with that, and that's one thing I'm sure that you teach is there is a time to mouth breathe. There's a purpose for it, but we should be obligate nasal breathing all of the time.
Exactly. So that's what I try to always be very clear when I talk about. So I go through three key steps for functional breathing. Just to sum it down, it's nose, low, and slow. And people are like, if I forget to tell this that I'm gonna say, they're like, oh, I was yawning through my mouth and I was not meant to do that. No, it's fine. It's just about what you do the majority of your breaths during the day, or what you do habitually. Don't worry if you yawn, if you cry, if you laugh through the mouth, you're meant to do that. But as long as you go back to mouth breathing, even going to these breathwork classes, when people are like, oh, wait, I went to this breathwork class and we did the complete opposite. We were doing mouth, chest, and fast, and you said no, slow and slow. That's completely fine because, as you said, you do it deliberately during a short period of time. It could be 1 hour, it could be 2 hours, but as long as you know to go back to functional breathing after that. But that can be a risk with these breathwork classes. People haven't learned about the functional breathing, the basics of breathing, so they might continue to breathe up into their chest and even through their mouth. And then that's when the negative stress is turned on. That can reduce your immune system and that can lead to all these negative health risks. So,
Yeah, the immune system, that's um, a big deal. So many people, are, it seems like they're allergic and they just are so susceptible to disease. And proper breathing can really enhance your immune system and keep you from getting acute or chronic disease. It helps to fight that. I always tell our patients, if you can't breathe well, you're not healthy. No matter what you do, you can't be healthy unless you breathe healthy. And coaches like you are to us, it's invaluable. I mean, 10 years ago, I probably would have just gone, what? This is crazy. But I have experienced myself and with our patients. We just had a patient yesterday that we, as a young girl, probably 12, 13, we did expansion. When we expand the jaws of young children and adults, it opens the nasal passages. It allows them to breathe through their nose better because the floor of the nasal passages is the roof of the mouth. And so if we can expand that upper jaw, it will open up the nasal passages as well. So one of the things we teach our patients from the first day we see them is we give them nasal breathing instructions. We want them to be nasal breathing. We want to make them aware of it. Um, but we can't do everything in our practice. So that's why I'm really excited to have you, because we have someone that we can say, hey, look, go to the website. By the way, Alexander will put, what is your website again? Let's get that put on the bottom of the screen.
yeah, it's breathcurriculum.com. I think you can see it in my name, how it's
Yeah.
spelled.
Oh, yeah, I see it there. Yeah,
Ah,
breath
yeah,
curriculum, and Alexander will put it in there too.
perfect.
Um, so, tell me a little bit about your process. What different kind of courses you offer. If someone wants to get involved with you, they would obviously go to your website, and I've been on it too. It's wonderful, and you have a lot of different ways people can kind of come in and get started.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add to what you said, like you teach them how to or to nose breathe, but maybe you don't have time to teach them like why and exactly what's the difference and what happens if you do the one or the other. But that's what I go through, and that's what I find so interesting with breathing. Like if you say, because I've heard before I became a breath coach, I heard like, oh yeah, we should breathe into the belly, but I was like, it doesn't really matter. I breathe into my chest. It works fine. And I didn't think too much about it. But when I heard, oh, why should we breathe with our diaphragm? And why should we breathe into our lower ribs? Oh, now I'm more motivated to do it. So when I go through the difference of breathing through the nose and the mouth, people get more motivated to do it. They get motivated. They're like, oh, no, I cannot breathe through my mouth because they know all the benefits. So that's one thing that I find very fun to talk about because people get so like, oh, how could I not know about this? And now I'm motivated. But anyways, if people want to work with a breathwork coach, like me, they can, yeah, do a one-on-one coaching if that works best for some people. Some people need that personal support, same as like going to seeing a PT at the gym. Anyone can go to the gym and work out, but some people find it that they do it if they have a PT. Same with breathing. You have me as your coach so that you do it, because otherwise, life comes in between. And then some people want to really dive into the science, and they want to do it in their own pace, and they want to do it a little cheaper. It's cheaper to do the online courses. So yeah, I have the online courses. They're very digestible. I've got a lot of feedback that they've looked at other courses that are there's so much material, so they get overwhelmed. And my courses, I really like distilled it down to what's most important, and I deliver it in like short videos, 5 minutes in 5 minutes of theory and then 5 minutes of practice. So you can always practice what you learn, and you always know what you're practicing. You know what's happening in your body when you do this specific practice, which motivates most people more. So that's how they're structured: 5 minutes of intro or theory and 5 minutes of practice. And then you have different classes. So it's very digestible. You don't have to set off so much time for each. You can just like go in 5 minutes here and there when you have extra time. So you have the courses, and then you have a certificate. So some people really want to have the certificate, because yeah, it's something within us.
Yeah.
Even though the courses they include almost the same thing, but the certificate includes everything that I have on my website. So if you want everything, certificate is your way. Even though you don't want to be a breathwork coach, you can still do the certificate. So those are the online courses. And then again, I do group sessions, or if someone have like, oh, I have 5 friends and we want to do a private group session together, then that could work too. I can also
What are the youngest and the oldest clients that you have?
Yeah, I was thinking about before this. So I haven't worked that much with younger people. I've worked with maybe two or three around 10 years old, but I have nieces and nephews, and I think I started with them when they were 4 or 3. As soon as they
Wow.
could start talk, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, close your mouth. And when they were watching TV, and it was like, I was like, mouth closed. I was doing what the ancients did. So closing
Right.
the mouth. So
Right.
I think you can start as early as you want to. As
Yeah.
as you told the story, they were just doing it on the infant. So
Yeah.
you,
So
as
they're
a
teaching them.
exactly, as a parent,
Yeah.
you can keep an eye, and you can just like, gently shut their mouth. And when they can start to understand, and you can talk to them, you can say all the reasons. Okay. And for some kids who are like very particular with their, or they have started to realize how they look and they want to look good, you can say, okay, you will look nicer in a few years if you nose breathe. Because as you know, when you mouth breathe at a young age, when the face is developing, it
It
can.
doesn't develop right. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
you can utilize those small things. I try not to do that one, but sometimes I have to get them motivated. So I think you can start as early as you want, and it would just help.
How quickly do your clients start seeing results?
Yeah, so that's also something I get often asked from clients, like how often do I have to do it to see a result? But the funny thing is with breathing, we take 3 breaths and we feel the difference already.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
take one breath and we're like, oh, I already feel calmer, and I was
Right.
stressed and I just had, not maybe for anxiety, but someone who actually went to my session this week, she texted me on Instagram saying, hey, I went to your workshop. I used one of your breathwork practices when I felt anxious in the evening, and I straight away felt the shift. So that's how powerful your breath is. It's always there with you. It's free.
Yeah.
You always have access, and it can work instantly.
Yeah.
And having anxiety and being prone to like having anxiety attacks, just knowing that and just trying that can be a big difference in your life. So yeah,
It does. It's something you carry with you all the time, and you can stop and even if you do, 2 or 3 minutes. I was waiting for a table at a restaurant with my daughter, and I've got a little box breathing app on my phone. So we just sat there. We had to wait about 10 minutes. We just sat there and we box breathed for 10 minutes, just looking at the
perfect.
app on the phone, breathing in for 8 seconds, holding it, and breathing out. And it was it's almost it's like taking a drug. It's like, it's better than not that I would know, but people that take IV drugs or they crack cocaine or whatever to get a quick. It really is something that makes that you can do at any time, and you can. One really interesting thing. I don't know if you teach this, but when we were at the breath retreat, we were talking about directed breathing. Like I have a lower back issue just from 35 years of doing dentistry. And I'm probably going to have a minor surgery there, but it's not bothering me too much now, but I know it's going to get worse in the future. But when I do my breathing exercise, I will direct my thoughts and my breathing to that place in my back. And it really does have a healing power to it. The human body is amazing if we use it correctly. And purposeful breathing is something that everybody can do. Um, Doing it the right way, though, is very important to have a coach like you to teach it. But once you learn it, then you can, that's something, it's a gift that God has given us, and we carry it with us every single day in our lives. So I'm very
Yeah.
thankful for people like you because we need to increase the awareness of of breathing and how important it is.
And you have the rest of your life to practice. It's nothing you need to like stress through. And people are like, oh, it's too late or it's too early or something. No, you don't need. Now you know the tools. You will not forget them because you will do them automatically, and you have the rest of your life to practice, and it would
Right.
make you feel better. And if you don't do it, you will probably do the opposite, which is dysfunctional breathing, and it will tear on your body for the rest of your life instead. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that parents of young children is something, it's almost a curse. We go to the grocery store, we go to a restaurant, we see these kids breathing through their mouth, and we're just going, "Oh, you want to go over to the parents and 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 tell them?" But we we have to have our personal lives too, and you don't want to, infringe on people's privacy. But I just see these kids with these slack jaws and their mouths are open, and I just know what is in store for them for the rest of their life, and that can all be avoided. Can all
Mm.
be avoided if it starts at a young age. And like you said earlier, 10 years old or so, they can start listening. And I think probably having the parents do it, have the kids, there with them and watching the parents and emulating what the parents do. Um, can make a huge difference, and kids will do that. They imitate us whether we like it or not. Good habits and bad habits. So
Yeah, and I also think it's important to explain the why, because some people come to me and they were like, "Oh, my grandma always said like you have to breathe through your nose, blah blah blah," and they were like, whatever, because they didn't explain why, and it was
right.
just the grandma saying that, and then they come to a session with me and they were like, "Oh, I didn't ever realize why she told me that for so many years, and now I'm really motivated." So the why is important too, but yeah, I mean, first step is always like what to do.
Well, in Catlin's book, Catlin, I say Catlin, you said Caitlin, I'm not sure which one it is, but in his book from 1870, he has drawings of pictures of people that breathe through their mouth and breathe through their nose. This was what, almost 150 years ago, and still those same drawings are like in James Nestor's books. And there's some principles of health that don't change, and this is one of them. So we think that we're so smart in our society now. I mean, people back in the 1800s, 16, there are some brilliant people, and just these observations. I think people had more time to observe back then because they weren't inundated with their iPhones and social media. They had more time to observe and really think about what is going on. And with, you think of the people that mapped out the planets, back, three, four, five, 600 years ago. How do they do that? It's just the human brain is very powerful, and these observations that were made by these very smart people are still alive and well today. And the Weston Price Foundation, I'm sure you're very familiar with that, Weston Price, and on how diet affects our development of our jaws and the way we breathe as well. These principles have been around for centuries, and they've never been proven wrong, but we've gotten away from that. So I think that what you're teaching is something that's been under the radar for way, way, way too long. And fortunately, and we may live in a little bit of a bubble because the people that we get in our practice, most of our patients have an idea. They've been doing their research, and maybe they've run across someone like you, or and they know that there's another way to gain health than the typical Western medicine. And I'm not here to bash Western medicine. I mean, I had a parasite infection coming back from Costa Rica when we went and saw James Nestor, and I was like sick for 6 weeks, just this low grade nausea. And my my physician, we did a blood test, and he put me on Bactrim. In 2 days it was gone, but we had to identify, so there's a place for Western medicine, but I think that most people that want to have true health are going to do things like this that allow their bodies to defend against you know disease and chronic illnesses. And I mean, don't you think that breathing is probably aside from eating correctly as well, but breathing is it's on the front line of our total health and our defense against chronic disease, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's probably been missed because we do it automatically. Like all the other health pillars, we need to take a decision. Like, okay, we need to decide what to eat. We need to decide that we're going to go out for a run, and we need to like decide to go to bed early. But with breathing, it just, you do it automatically. So it's
Happens,
like,
yeah.
oh, if you do it automatically, obviously we do it right. That's where people get it wrong. They're like, but everything we do automatically doesn't mean it's right. If you think about it, if you think about food, for example, if you would trust your body all the time, you would eat cookies for breakfast and you would eat ice cream every night. Like, no, it's not what we're craving. It's not always right for us. And the same goes for breathing. Just because we breathe in a different way or in a certain way doesn't mean that that's good for us, because our society, we're not living as animals anymore. We're living as in this made up world. And
Right.
yeah, we're not using our body as we should, really.
Well, will people start if they go through like a program like yours and they start breathing exercises, will they, if they do that long enough, will that healthy breathing just be ingrained in them where they're not even thinking about it? Or is it something that you have to stop and think, okay, am I, or do you, I mean, do you find yourself when you're not thinking about it going, oh, you know what, I'm breathing shallow, I need to breathe better? Or does it become ingrained like a habit?
No, for me, I've really seen like, okay, I don't have to think about it anymore. I'm breathing through my mouth, I'm breathing through my nose. I feel like when I check in with my breath, yeah, I see my lower ribs expand and I don't feel my shoulders go up anymore. And so the more you practice, the more it will become a habit. Like everything else you practice becomes a
Right.
habit sooner or later if you practice long enough. And same with breathing. So that's why that could be a relief for people when they're like, "Oh, I thought I was going to have to think about this for the rest of my life now." No, you don't have to, but you will automatically think about it. You will get reminded because you're so in tune with your breath. So, yeah,
Well,
that's
I think singers probably are the one profession other than professional athletes that really think about breathing because that's so important for singing. And I have a band and I play guitar and I do the lead singing. And I know after starting breath work when we went to, to Nestor and I really got into this, it's my vocal range is more, my ease of which I sing is easier. I can sing longer. Um, we have a gig tonight that's going to be 3 hours, and I won't have any problem singing for 3 hours.
yeah,
So
that's
there
amazing.
there there are things that this isn't just for athletes or Navy SEALs. It's for everybody. Before we leave, I would like for you to touch on CO2 and pregnant women. I wrote something here. I'll read it and I'll let you kind of expound on that because we can start, or women can start, um, affecting the health of their baby when that baby is conceived and as it develops in the womb. But nasal breathing related to pregnancy and childbirth can be understood by the roles of oxygen and carbon dioxide. For oxygen to be available to the tissues, carbon dioxide levels must be adequate, as we talked about before. With chronic mouth breathing, there's a disproportionate loss of carbon dioxide, which results in a retention of carbon dioxide needed to, to facilitate oxygenation, as you alluded to earlier. By maintaining oxygenation, healthy nasal breathing helps to prevent hypoxia. During hypoxic episodes, one experiences muscle spasms, metabolic acidosis, increased cellular stress. Nasal breathing during childbirth prevents huge swings in oxygen availability to the tissue. So, hypoxia during childbirth can cause fetal stress, it can complicate the birth process. Nasal breathing helps to normalize the pH of the body and reduce any muscular stress that results from the lack of oxygenation. So there's strong evidence that nasal breathing was one of the chief factors in why the indigenous Native American mothers, uh, there was very little accounts of stillbirths or of problems during birth. And
Mm.
most of these children were born, in a tent or, out in the woods on dirt, not in a healthy, sterile hospital. But the mothers had prepared their bodies so well for it, and in turn prepared the fetus for it. So, do you work with a lot of pregnant women, or have you worked with pregnant women before? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have. And I had a friend who I taught or she got her baby the other month, and she was like, it was insane how much I used your breathing techniques and how easy it made the whole process. So that can be a big difference, but it's also good to know in the beginning of your or during your pregnancy, because when you get pregnant, your progesterone starts to rise closer and closer or higher and higher towards the delivery. And progesterone makes us more sensitive to CO2. So when we breathe, it's the CO2 that is trigger every breath we take. So this is a little complicated for people, but say you breathe out and then you wait for the reaction to take an in breath. That's not a lack of oxygen, it's the increase in carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide triggers every breath. And if we are more sensitive to carbon dioxide, the trigger will go off sooner, which means you breathe faster, which means you also probably might start to breathe through your mouth, because then you release the carbon dioxide faster and it feels better. But so that's important to know that, okay, I will feel more breathless during my pregnancy. And it's due to an increased CO2, and it's because I'm more sensitive to it. So when they know this, when they become more aware, they also know that they should, okay, I'm breathing through my mouth now because I feel breathless, but close my mouth, breathe slower through the nose, and you will feel easier. So you can practice, you can build up your CO2 tolerance to become or to make it easier to nose breathe during pregnancy. And same with the women's cycle, the monthly cycle. On the second part of our monthly cycle, when on the in the luteal phase, your progesterone also increases, so you become more breathless during the second phase of your cycle too. So that's also important to know. Okay, even though I feel breathless, I can practice to breathe slower because it will only benefit me, and I don't have that extra stress. So I also often comment like, we have so many stressors in life, so many external stressors. We have a deadline, we have a bill to pay, etc. So we get stress from the outside world. On top of that, if we're breathing dysfunctionally, we have an extra layer of stress that is just coming from inside us, just from us breathing. And that is such unnecessary stress on our whole system. So, yeah, that's just a little bit about breathing and pregnancy.
Well, I don't, yeah, people don't realize how much chronic stress is detrimental to their emotional and physical health. And breath work is something that it's like a little medicine bag you just carry around with you all the time, and you can use it anytime you want in any situation. And it does make a huge difference. I know it has changed my life and the lives of the patients that we've been able to move forward with having them read James Nestor's book or getting to a breath coach. although other than James Nestor and the people we met there, I've never really um, I didn't know. I mean, I knew there were breath coaches out there, but now we have a direct connection with you, and we're going to have you do a session or several sessions with our entire team at our office because we feel like if we're going to preach it, we got to live it. And Adriana and I are, but we want our whole team to benefit and see the benefits of this so they can share it with our patients. So Elsa, I really appreciate you being on today. Our time is up. The website is breathcurriculum.com. Alexander will put it up there. Elsa Unenge, right? Is that kind of what?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no one can say my surname. It's Unenge, but even in Sweden, where it's from, no one
Yeah.
can say it. So just skip it. Just say Elsa.
Okay.
Elsa at Breath Curriculum.
Well, your first name's easy to pronounce, so it's
Yeah,
been a real pleasure. I'm looking forward to working with you. We're going to be, like I said, we're going to be putting in our treatment plans for our patients, your website, and encouraging every single one of them as part of their treatment with us to work with you as well. So I'm really looking forward to that collaboration and looking forward to you helping our team here at the Stewart Center get healthier and breathe better.
me too. Super excited. I'm so happy that we connected through a patient in common.
Yeah. Yeah, one of our patients is has a testimonial on your website. So, yeah, it's funny how connections are made, and you just you never know around the corner what neat person you're going to meet next. So, we're Adriana and our whole team here are very happy to have met you, and we're excited about the future. And I would tell anyone watching this podcast to go to Elsa's website and start doing some breath work. It will change your life. I promise you, it will change your life. So, um, start as soon as you can. Thank you, Elsa, so much. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend, and we'll be in touch.
We will. Thank you too. Thanks for
This has
having
been
me.
Health and Harmony Beyond the Teeth with Dr. Hal Stewart and breathcurriculum.com. It'll change your life. Thanks, Elsa.